Hello and welcome to CVG's E3 Watch Dogs special. I'm Tim Clark. I'm joined by Dan Dawkins and Tim Weaver.
Hello.
We're about to hear from John Hicks, who's editor of Official Xbox magazine. He's been seeing the game on Ubisoft stands behind closed doors. It's one of the most anticipated games, I think, currently in development, certainly one of the stars of E3. All about surveillance, hacking, set in the near future. So let's find out what John thought of it so far.
Hi there, welcome back to E3 2013. I'm joined by Official Xbox magazine editor John Hicks.
Hello there.
And John and myself, we've both been in to see Watch Dogs in a behind closed doors preview gameplay session. So John T, can you tell us a bit about your impressions initially of the game? Like, what do you think?
I really like it. I mean, it's kind of building on what we saw last year. So this time they're kind of showing it some slightly bigger ideas about how you can interact with the city, kind of hacking traffic bollards to stop the police chasing you, kind of hiding from helicopters and police cars. Then there was some quite cool stuff about showing how you can go into like different wards, which is reminded me a little bit of the way Far Cry 3's open world works, where you can kind of whereas rather than going into into an encampment and killing everybody in it, you kind of have to go into like this kind of cell phone tower and hack it, and then that gives you the ability to kind of get into the phones around that area. And then there was some other really smart stuff about the multiplayer, how you can like hop into other people's worlds and kind of attempt to hack them, and then they can stop you and chase you down.
Now the suggestion in the online thing is very interesting because they seem to demonstrate the fact that you can jump into anyone's game at any time without them knowing.
Yeah.
Now to me that says always online.
Yes, and that would seem sensible to me. I mean, I do wonder whether, because obviously one of the big things about Xbox recently has been like, oh, it's got to be always online. I do wonder whether this is something that and a bunch of games here at the show this year are kind of they are very online. Like, people are very careful not to say always online. Watch Dogs strikes me as one that's absolutely been built for online. Like, maybe this was kind of tied up with that sort of expectation. That's where consoles are going, and this one, I mean. The multiplayer is really interesting because, like, actually, there's so much stuff about Watch Dogs that feels like it's been borrowed from other games, like in this one, other Ubisoft games, I should say. So in this one, it's like the Assassin's Creed multiplayer, where you're kind of automatic. You can hop into somebody else's game, but you appear as an NPC, and then you just have to kind of act as nonchalant as you possibly can whilst hacking them, that sort of thing, which I think is quite cute. It does seem like it's one of those things where you would have to, obviously you've got to be online to make that work. It seems to be that this is one of many games this year where like online connectivity is a really big part of it, and Ubisoft pushing that really hard as well. Like in the Crew, that's almost, as far as I can tell, is always online, and
the Division, of course, as well, the new IP.
Of course, yeah. And so like, Ubisoft's big theme this year seems to be online games with tablet integration.
Well, obviously, it just come out the Assassin's Creed one as well, and the tablet integration there is really, really important and really interesting. You know, it adds an interesting new dynamic to the game, but it does seem to be a massive, massive thing for them this year. Was there anything else in the Watch Dogs presentation that really stood out for you and gave you a new view on it?
I think just seeing how the multiplayer works, I thought was really cool. I think what I do want to see is the fact that the way the guy was playing it, he kind of reduced, kind of like brought out the guns a lot, which actually was a little bit disappointing. Like I don't know, maybe it's the kind of Hitman fan in me, but what I find really exciting about that game is maybe the idea of being able to just do it as this kind of like pure stealth, where you can just like sneak around and hack people and just be really invisible. Like just kind of breaking out guns and killing people just seemed a bit kind of tight. You know, there are loads of open world games in which I can kill people, and this one, like, there's all these systems. Like, it just seems like a shame that you don't exploit them. So yeah, I'm really hoping that there is that flexibility to kind of go through the whole game like that, and not just shoot people. There's enough games for that.
Thanks very much, John T. Watch Dogs is looking really interesting and really, really beautiful. Stay tuned for more as and when we get it.
So, boys, John seemed really impressed there. Do you share his sentiments? Are you intrigued, having heard what he's got to say?
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited about seeing it in action. I think there's a reason people are excited about it, and I think it's taken that sort of GTA formula and applying a kind of different vibe to it. I kind of agree with him a little bit on what he said about him having slight worries about it being too shooty and not stealthy enough. Now, I'm also a bit of a Hitman fan, also a bit of a stealth fan, and for me that would be a worry. I hope it doesn't descend into like all-out shooting, because that definitely doesn't appeal to me as much.
Dan, I read an interview with one of the Ubisoft executives where they said that the reception that Watch Dogs got at the last E3 was the kind of thing you only get every 3 or 4 years for a new IP, in the sense that it immediately kind of stole the show from a lot more established brands. What do you think it is about this game that seems to have resonated pretty heavily with gamers?
It's like we discussed that when the original Assassin's Creed launched, it was the first game to show what the new generation could actually do. So this was the first next-gen game we ever saw last year. It's nailed the setting, as we've discussed. It's modern world, it's big open city, people love that. It's just the idea of hacking's very now, isn't it? With things like Prism, Google stealing all our data and God knows what else. It just feels very modern and very current.
I've seen it described, I think, as Batman with a smartphone. So I think it's got that really sort of simple sort of sell, like be a cyber vigilante. It's quite easy to sort of understand. One of the things that from reading about the game that stood out for me is this notion, which John alluded to, of other players coming into your game, kind of Dark Souls style, invading your game, hacking you, stealing your credits. The game's got a big built-in economy where you can sell guns and you can kind of lift credit card details and stuff. Do you think that's is that something you'll like? I think people with Dark Souls have reacted to it differently. A lot of people like it, but I've seen other people furious that people could rock up in their games and sort of start causing mischief.
I guess it depends to what extent you can do it. I mean, they must place some sort of limitation on it. Because otherwise, every time you go into that game, you're just going to get people constantly hacking you, and you're going to be like, "What? I just want to play the game."
I mean, John was the perfect diplomat, obviously representing the Xbox format. But I mean, I don't like the idea of being forced to be always effectively online, or sort of, optional, permanent online, however you describe it. And then, like, you constantly having to swat off like flies, men trying to hack away at my stuff. There must be some limit, as Tim says, or some way to control it.
But there is a prevalence, I think, generally at this E3, I think John was right to highlight it, of games which are looking to blur the boundaries between multiplayer and single player and on and offline. You see with Titanfall and with Destiny, games that are really trying to forge into that space, perhaps because they all assumed it was going to be an always-on world, and Sony's pulled the rug from it slightly.
Yeah, I mean, it's the natural way for consoles to go, I think, and I just think Microsoft got their message so badly wrong that people have got their defences up about it. And I think if they got their message right and kind of approached it from a PR perspective a lot better, I think people would be less there'd be less sort of aggression about this kind of always online thing. Because, most of our, tablets and stuff, they're always online, so it's not like a massive thing. But I think because Microsoft basically messed up their PR message, people are very anti it, and it's become a bit of a watchword.
I think there's a smart way to do hacking. What I fear is they'll do a thing of guy invades your game with guns. So that seems to me a bit like
just rocks up firing from the hip.
It's a bit hackney, but there might be a clever way to do it, where, for example, you set your own encryption codes on your game. So let's say, for example, you've got 30 seconds to type in Simon Says colour sequences, right? And then the other guy, if he's hacking your game, has got to break your code you've input. And it's a little thing of like me versus them. I've created a little code.
I think there'll definitely be like a cat and mouse type element to it. It was interesting hearing him say as well how I think by hacking certain buildings or comms towers that you then open up areas of the map, much like we saw with Far Cry last year and then Assassin's Creed before that. And I guess you're seeing when the budgets are so high and the risks are so high that the big developers are sensibly, I imagine, for a lot of the gameplay, relying on things that have worked well recently.
Yeah, I mean, Far Cry was a massive success. Assassin's Creed's multiplayer, I thought, was absolutely brilliant. I love the idea of being able to kind of go into a multiplayer game and the other player not having a clue who you were out of the many people that were there. So I see Watch Dogs. I mean, John alluded to it in the video that I see Watch Dogs working a bit like that, and I think that could be fun. I just think there does need to be some sort of they need to then ring fence it a little bit. Otherwise, it could become, like you say, or Dan said, run into the world, firing from the hip. I mean, that's where I'm out.
There was another nice touch I read where you I think you can scan almost anyone who's got an electronic device in the game, which I guess is pretty much everyone. And in one preview I read, the chap was trying to get into a building, was scanning all the security guards, and he found that one fished with dynamite. Quite whether that meant he was walking around with his pocket stuffed with dynamite the whole time. I don't know whether that logically follows.
Keys, wallet, pack of dynamite, I'm out.
So that sounded interesting. I think generally it's definitely one of the stars of the show, as we suggested at the top. My one concern with it would be that Ubi have a track record of coming up with really great concepts, like you said, Dan, and then perhaps slightly under-delivering on the first iteration. The original Assassin's Creed was a brilliant concept and a brilliant design, but actually in terms of the gameplay, it was hugely repetitive, and that'll be, I think the challenge with Watch Dogs is for it to be about more than just using bollards that pop up, to have more ideas. But
I mean, what you got to remember is that Rockstar, as an example, as a sort of proponent of the ultimate open world, I guess, have been doing this a long time. And we've seen a bit of GTA 5, and we know that it looks incredible, but that's 5 games in, and so doing an open world is not like and I know they've done it to a certain extent with Assassins and Far Cry. No, they're not new to open world, but this is a different, this is a different kettle of fish. I think, it's like they're trying something even more beyond what they tried in Far Cry.
Even just having the cars in it makes it, I think, a different beast. And I think the car stuff's being outsourced, isn't it, to the Newcastle studio?
It looked cool, the car stuff, really fast, like quite pacey. I thought it looked good.
All right, well, that's definitely a positive reception for Watch Dogs. Stay tuned to CVG and the CVG YouTube channel for more E3 gameplay previews throughout the rest of the week.